Hello and good evening, everyone. I'll wait just a couple minutes for everybody to get on, but my name is Christy Dosh, and tonight I am going to talk about how to establish yourself as an expert and why you would even want to do that in the first place and all the kind of cool things you can do with your newfound expert label. So I will wait just a couple of minutes before we get started and give people a chance to jump on here. If you're here already, please say hello. I'd love to know who's here. Maybe tell me where you're from or what you do. I'm excited to get to know everybody a little bit better. And I've got some kind of interactive things I want to do while we go through this tonight. So hopefully you'll all feel comfortable sharing and getting a little more visible and embracing your expertise. This is a really exciting topic for me because I established myself as an expert and was able to really change my career. So it's an exciting topic to talk about, and I'm really excited to be able to share it with all of you and learn more about what you're doing. So we'll just wait another minute or so and see who else joins us live before we get started. If you're here, please say hello, tell us where you're from, maybe what you do, and I will wait just a minute to get started. This is kind of different for me. I had to set up my studio a little bit different because I'm used to going live during the day when I've got tons of natural light coming into this room. And so having to set it up at night and get enough light going so that you guys can see me and so that I'm not totally in the shadows was a fun exercise for me because I don't think I've ever really recorded in here at night. So I've never had to figure out my whole lighting situation. So we will just wait like a minute longer and go ahead and get started and talk about how to establish yourself as an expert, why you would want to do that anyway, and the opportunities that'll be available to you once you are an expert and recognized as an expert in your field. If you're here, say hello. I'd love to know who's joined us, and we will get started in just a minute. I'm super excited to talk about this tonight. It's strange, like I've already had dinner and everything. I feel like I should be going to bed, not getting on Facebook. I try not to spend too much of my nighttime on Facebook and spend it with my husband instead, but he is off working on his own business right now downstairs, so I get to spend a little time with you guys tonight. I'm excited. Okay. So if you're here, say hi and feel free to jump in with questions or comments at any time. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I wanted to talk tonight about how to establish yourself as an expert. And there are probably some people wondering, why would you want to do that anyway? I know I meet a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs early on in their businesses, who don't feel comfortable calling themselves an expert. And I also meet people who are much further along in their entrepreneurial journey who should be calling themselves experts and aren't yet because they're not comfortable with it. So we're going to talk about how to define your area of expertise and how to become more comfortable calling yourself an expert. Because the thing about it is, if you aren't calling yourself an expert, no one else is going to either. And why is that important? It's important because when you are trying to garner more publicity opportunities, whether that's a guest blog or it's a podcast interview, maybe it's a speaking engagement, maybe you want to write a book, any of those opportunities to market yourself and your business usually require that you have some level of expertise. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to frame that up and how we're all experts at something. This is not some like advanced level sort of stuff that's only meant for people who've like already published books or who speak all over the country. This is something for every single one of you out there. Every single one of you can call yourselves an expert. And here's the key to being comfortable using that word expert. And it's to understand that being an expert does not mean that you are the foremost expert on a subject, okay? It doesn't mean that you are the one person who understands your subject. You're the most studied person on that subject, that somehow you have some level of expertise that's far above everyone else's. That's not what expert necessarily means. We are all experts at our own experience, okay? So every single one of you who's watching this live and those of you who watch this on the replay, every single one of you is an expert, okay? You're all an expert on your own experience. And so I want you to do a little exercise with me. We're going to do it maybe a couple of times because I'm curious to see how your answers might change from the beginning of the video to the end of the video. So whether you're watching this live or later on the replay, I'd love for you to pop your answer to this in the comments. But I always have my clients and people in my group, which is called the Visibility Workshop, go through a little fill in the blank with me. And the fill in the blank goes like this. I am an expert at or on fill in the blank because fill in the blank, okay? You might not feel comfortable saying, I'm an expert at social media marketing, or I am an expert at public relations. You might not feel comfortable with that. Where you can get comfortable is explaining why you're an expert in that space, okay? So for example, there's someone in my group who is a virtual assistant. Okay, lots of virtual assistants out there. And that's where a lot of people get stuck in their head on this whole expert thing, is they think about all the other people out there who are doing what they do, and they're comparing themselves and they're thinking, oh, I'm not an expert because this person's been doing it longer, or they have more clients, or they had a 6-figure year this year and I'm not going to have one. Throw all that out the window, okay? So this VA that's in my group, I just think he's a really good example. He is an expert on helping entrepreneurs with the financial side of their business, with bookkeeping and that sort of thing. And he's an expert in that area because he spent over 30 years in the financial services industry, okay? So he had a great statement that I'm not going to be able to piece together word for word, but it was about how he is an expert at assisting entrepreneurs with getting their finances in order because he spent over 30 years in the financial services industry. So you sort of see what I mean here. That's why I like this version of the fill in the blank for figuring out your expertise. I am an expert at or on X because, okay, that's where you put in the personal experience. So I am an expert at helping people garner publicity for themselves and for their business because I was my own publicist first, and my efforts led me to transition my career from being a corporate attorney to being a nationally recognized sports business reporter for Forbes and then with ESPN. So that's why I think it's so important to understand that you don't have to be the foremost expert on your subject. I'm not the foremost expert on the business of sports, but I end up on lists all the time of the top experts on the business of sports, okay? I don't have to be number one, although I'm a little competitive and type A, so of course I want to be number one. I know a lot of you out there probably want to be number one in your niche, but you don't have to be number one to call yourself an expert, because every single one of you is an expert on your own experience. And I found that a lot of my clients, when they start embracing that idea of being an expert on their own experience and why their background makes what they do unique. So a lot of VAs out there, a lot of coaches out there, a lot of attorneys out there, whatever you are, there are other people who do what you do. What makes you different from all of them is your personal experiences that you're bringing to the table. So maybe it's your career background. Maybe it's something that happened in your family. I was just watching an episode of The Profit, which is one of my favorite shows. I love, love, love shows where I get business advice, and The Profit is one of my favorites. And I was just watching a show, and this woman created a product because her son had an allergy. Okay, that's her why. If you're into Simon Sinek, he has a great video and book about starting with why, and that ties in here as well. And that's part of her sort of brand story and part of her messaging. Hi, Lindsay. Hi, Amanda and Adrian. I'm so excited you guys are all here. You haven't missed too much yet. All I've really talked about so far is the fact that every single one of you is an expert, and it's time to embrace that label and to start using it. Because if you want to land guest blogs on big publications like Entrepreneur and Forbes Inc., Fast Company, those types of publications, you want to speak at major conferences where you're sharing the stage with people like Simon Sinek, or you want to go on television, you want to have a piece in a national magazine, those sort of opportunities for publicity and for visibility, they really are reserved for experts. But that doesn't mean that's not you, okay? You are an expert on your own experience, and you have your own unique experience and background that gives you that little twist on what you do that makes you different from the other person you see in a Facebook group who offers the same types of services that you do, okay? It might be that you have, more years of experience, and so you think that you provide better services than them, or it might be that you've been doing it longer, or you think your packages are built better. What actually sets you apart is your own experience. Okay. People are going to identify with pieces of your story. And that's why it's so important to share those pieces of your story and to really work them into your marketing messaging. And I think that starts by figuring out, where does your expertise lie? Okay. I am a great publicist, and I can call myself an expert on garnering publicity because I'm my own best case study. Okay. I was a practicing attorney for almost 5 years. I was a corporate attorney, did real estate finance, mostly on a corporate team, a little securities and mergers and acquisitions. Okay. But I was blogging on the side about the business of sports. And I found this little niche for myself in the business of college sports, which at the time, not many people were covering. And I was able to establish myself as an expert while working full time, by the way, by writing guest blogs, starting my own blog, doing podcast interviews, and then eventually doing TV and radio and getting my name mentioned in newspaper articles and that sort of thing. And after a couple of years of that, I was actually able to transition because ESPN essentially knocked on my door and asked me to come be their sports business reporter. So I always tell people I'm my own best case study. I mean, that's part of how I ended up becoming a publicist. I am still a sports business reporter for Forbes and do that when I have time and when I don't have client demands, because my clients come first and foremost. But my experience is different than another publicist, okay? Another publicist might have gotten a degree that's more applicable to what we do. My degree's in politics, okay? And please, let's not talk about the election. Another publicist might have worked in a big publicity firm in New York City. Okay, I've done none of those things. I was an attorney, and then I wrote for Forbes and for ESPN as a sports business reporter, and had broadcast opportunities with that as well. And then I did work in a PR firm where I did some ghostwriting, where I picked up some of the things that I use within my publicity business. Hi, Kelly. It's so much fun to see you guys that I know here. So I created this, my own sort of expertise for myself based on my own experience and based on my own connections. So because I've written for Forbes and Fast Company, and because I've been on national TV, and because I routinely go on podcasts and radio shows and that sort of thing, I have those connections in the industry, and I can work those connections for my clients. As a matter of fact, I'm a paid writer for Forbes. I also got one of my clients a paid writing position for Forbes. I got another client a one-off opportunity that she wanted with Forbes. That all came from my connections at Forbes, and from the editors that I know from the years that I've spent there. And that's what makes me different from another publicist, is my experience. And so I promise you that all of you have that too. And if you're here and want to pop in the comments, I would love to hear your version of my fill in the blank, which is, I am an expert at or on whatever you're an expert at because, and explain to us why you're an expert. So don't just say, I'm an expert at social media marketing. Why are you an expert on social media marketing? What is it about your background and your experience that makes you an expert on social media marketing, okay? And the reason that this exercise is so important is not only because it gets you to see yourself as an expert, and like I said earlier, if you're not ready to call yourself an expert, no one else is going to either. Not only is it important from that standpoint, but it's important when you do get ready to start pitching yourself or having someone else like me pitch you for publicity opportunities. So if you want to guest blog at a big publication, you want to land a big speaking gig, you want to start getting paid to speak, you want to do TV and radio interviews, to do those things, you've got to convince someone that you're an expert and that you have a unique angle, okay? Because they're getting pitches from a lot of people. And what makes you an expert and what makes you unique, and I'm going to say this over and over because I really want to drive it home for you, what makes you unique and what really establishes your expertise is your experience, your background, whether that's your degree, that's the places you've worked before, it's something that's happened within your family. Maybe your business is built on something that happened to one of your children. It doesn't matter what it is, that experience, those things that make you uniquely you, those are the things that establish your expertise. So you've got to kind of pull it all together and say, I am an expert at social media marketing because why? what is your background like that puts you in a position to be an expert on that topic? So I'd love to hear what you guys are saying. Kelly says, I'm an expert at turning female entrepreneurs into badass leaders through mindset mastery because I spent 20 years as a successful therapist, speaker, and trainer. There you go. Do you know how many people I see on Facebook every day talk about doing mindset coaching? What makes Kelly different? Kelly spent over 20 years as a successful therapist. She's been a speaker. She's been a trainer. That's what makes her different, okay? It's not to say she's the only mindset person out there who also has a background in therapy, okay? You don't have to have, when you're putting together this sort of expert statement, it doesn't have to be perfectly unique, okay? There are going to be other people who maybe can say similar things, but try to infuse enough of your background and experience that it really does set you apart and make you different, because it is your experience and your background that make you different. And it's those things that draw people to you. They see pieces of their own story and their own journey in yours. And that's what makes them want to work with you. It's also what makes editors and talent bookers want to work with you, okay? They identify with pieces of your story too, or they know enough about their audience. They know their audience is going to identify with that. And so you can't just have this plain vanilla bland pitch, no matter what it's for, TV, radio, speaking gig, guest blog. You've really got to hone in on why you're an expert, and it's because of that background and experience you have that's different. Brooke, hi Brooke, I love Brooke. So Brooke says that she is an expert because she's been doing it for over 8 years. Absolutely, okay? But it's important to tell people that. So you don't just tell people, I'm an expert at social media marketing, okay? Because someone who decided last week that they're a social media strategist might say that. It's important to give those details about your background that position you more or better as an expert, okay? So let's talk a little bit about I've got one more I want to read. Okay. I'm an amazing women's wellness coach. I'm sorry. This is Brooke Reed Hartle. She says, I'm an amazing women's wellness coach because I turned my own health around and went on to work the last 4 years for 2 New York Times bestselling nutritionists. Okay. Completely unique. I guarantee you there's no one else in this group that can write that same thing. That's the kind of statement you want to have. And we can try this again at the end if you're still thinking on what your statement is. And those of you who watch this later on the replay, I'd still love to have you post it so that I can come back and see what your statements are. You never know when there's someone who's watching who's going to read your expert statement and say, that's the expert I need. I want to talk to that person. Okay. So important to develop that statement and to put it out there and to really make it part of your messaging, whether it's in Facebook groups or it's in your newsletter or when you're doing Facebook Lives or whatever else you're doing, because sharing that is what's going to draw people to you and make them want to work with you. Okay, so why do we really care about developing this expert statement, okay? At the end of the day, we all want to grow our businesses, right? And whether that's because you want to make more money or maybe you want to make a larger impact. I know people have got different reasons and maybe you have a lot of reasons for why you want to grow your business. But the reason it's so important to decide what your expertise is and to really establish yourself and start talking about yourself as an expert in that space is because that is how you are going to get the awesome publicity and visibility opportunities that are going to put you in front of your ideal audience and your ideal client, okay? So my sort of tagline for my business, because I'm a publicist, is it doesn't matter how good you are at what you do if no one knows you do it, okay? That's why it's so important to find these ways to be visible and to really work on your opportunities to have publicity, because it doesn't matter if you are the very best social media strategist on the planet or you're the very best attorney in your space. It doesn't matter if no one knows about it, okay? And how are they going to know about it? It's all about getting out there and getting visible through things like guest blogs and speaking engagements. It's social media and Facebook Lives. It's TV and radio. It's being in magazines. You know, there are a lot of different opportunities to garner publicity and become more visible. You might be more comfortable with some of them than others. I have some clients who come to me and tell me they don't think they're ready for TV. They don't want to be pitched for TV. I have other clients who come and say, I'm not a great writer. I don't think guest blogs are for me. Some of it we can work around. You know, some of it we just want to play to your strengths. But in order to pitch yourself or to have someone like me pitch you, we've got to establish you as an expert. So in my pitch letters, when I put together for a client, and this is regardless of whether it's a guest blog, a traditional media opportunity, a speaking gig, when I put those pitch letters together, I've got to include a little bit of a bio about the person that I'm pitching. And in that bio, I am going to establish them as an expert. I'll probably even use the word, I'll probably say, Kelly is an expert at X because Y, and I'll give them examples. I need to position you as an expert because there's a lot of people who want to write on their blog or be on their podcast or be on their TV show. And so in order to get them to pay attention to you and to entrust you with their audience, which is what they're doing, you've got to give them a good reason. You've got to explain to them why you're the right person to come on and talk about that topic. And that all starts with establishing yourself as an expert. So that's why I wanted to lead you through that exercise and sort of get you thinking about what is your expertise and how can you frame it in a unique way by including your own experiences. Okay, so we do have another one that came in I want to read from Andrea. It says, I am an expert because I've had clients perform at a presidential inauguration, land record label and management deals, generate multi-million sales, and have had media professionals, I gotta expand this, provide preferential treatment to my clients due to the relationships I've built with them. That sounds pretty awesome to me, Andrea. You sold me. And as a matter of fact, let's talk because maybe we can collaborate and do some things for each other's clients. But that's an amazing statement. You did a great job with that. Kelly asked, is hiring someone like you a must or are there first steps? Okay, so I was my own publicist to start with. So I will never tell you that you have to have a publicist, okay? I don't even know if I really knew what the word publicist meant, and I certainly wasn't throwing it around back then, but I was my own publicist first. I was pitching myself for guest blogs and podcast interviews and TV and radio. I got myself on Forbes back in, so it was like 2008. It was before they really had the contributor model that they had now. I got myself on TV, not just once, but they ended up offering me a weekly segment. And all of those things built up over a couple year period to the point where ESPN came and hired me away from my legal practice. It wasn't just something that happened overnight or fell into my lap. It was because I was constantly putting myself out there as an expert on the business of sports, particularly the business of college sports. And I was everywhere. I was guest blogging, podcast interviews, radio interviews, TV interviews, getting quoted in newspapers. And I did all of that 100% myself and with no background in it, okay? I had no idea what I was doing, guys. I didn't know anyone else who did it. No one ever showed me like a sample email to send. I have just never been afraid to send an email and ask for what I want. And one of my favorite quotes is something about stop saying no for people, give them the opportunity to say yes. And that's definitely a mantra I've lived by. I am always willing to email somebody and ask for what I want. So Forbes and the TV station where I ended up having a segment, I sent emails. I didn't know anyone. I wasn't leveraging relationships. I sent blind emails to people, totally cold, and I just made it up as I went. Like if I went back and looked at those pitches, I'd probably be horrified now because now I have like a really distinct formula I like to use for myself and for clients. But back then I didn't know what I was doing. I was just writing an email. So 100% you can be your own publicist. It's all about figuring out what is your end goal? Are you trying to just gain credibility and establish your expertise? Or are you trying to drive people into a coaching program you have or course you have? Or maybe you're trying to sell a product. I know we've got some product-based businesses probably in here. I've got a client with a product-based business, so I deal with that some too. So you figure out what your goal is. That's sort of the first step. And then you figure out who needs to be in the audience for you to meet your goal. And that's whether it's a guest blog, a radio show, public speaking, whatever kind of visibility opportunity is. Figure out who needs to be in the audience and hear your message, read your message, whatever medium it's in, to get you to your goal. And then you figure out where do those people hang out? What conferences do they go to? What podcasts do they listen to? What publications do they read? And then bam, that's where you want to be, okay? You want to be in those places because you want to get in front of those people because those are the people who can get you to your goal. So a lot of times people come to me, and I don't want to get on like too much of a sidebar, but this is kind of quick. A lot of times people come to me and they say, I really want to do a TEDx speech. That's great. And it's great for establishing credibility, building up your expertise. It's great for just getting reps as a speaker. But if your goal in getting in front of them is to sell a book or get them into a certain program that you have, might not be the right audience, okay? You don't always know who's going to be in a TEDx audience. You might be better off going and speaking to a very small sort of niche group, okay? My client that has a product, she has a skincare line and it's vegan. And certainly it's fine for others to use and people buy it who aren't vegan. But we found that our most effective publicity opportunities that drive the most sales are when we do vegan niche publications and podcasts, okay? So she goes on TV actually a pretty fair amount, but she gets more sales from doing one guest blog on a vegan blog or one podcast interview on a vegan podcast, okay? So it's great to shoot for those big things if you want to do a TED speech or you want to write for Forbes or there's a big conference you want to speak at. I mean, those things are awesome for establishing credibility. You can put that little as seen in, kind of banner on your website, and absolutely those opportunities are worth doing. But really think about what your goal is and who you need to be in front of to achieve that goal. You might find that there are more targeted niche sort of things that you can do that are a little easier to land too, especially in the beginning. So in terms of where you start, that's all going to depend on who you want to get in front of. And it's going to depend on what you're most comfortable with. Are you most comfortable writing, or have you already had some speaking experience and you're really comfortable with that? And really play to those strengths in the beginning. And obviously it's great if you can do everything, if you can write guest blogs and do podcast interviews and go on TV. And, my goal is to always get my clients in a position where they can do all those things. But some people aren't comfortable with all of it, and it takes just a little bit of time. Okay, we've got another expert statement here. Amanda said, I'm an expert in getting people unstuck because I've helped clients go from broke to Forbes Women to Watch List. Yes, exactly. I'm so glad that you guys are really getting this. I've done this exercise a couple of times in other groups, and sometimes people just don't quite get it. And I feel like it's probably my fault. I didn't do a great job explaining it. But that's exactly how you want to put together your expert statement. Okay. I am an expert at or on whatever it is, because, okay? Now tell us why you're an expert, because it is your experience that makes you that expert that everybody's gonna want, whether it's wanting to work with you as a client, wanting to feature you on their blog, wanting to have you on their podcast to interview. It all starts from developing this sort of expert statement, because that is something you can put right in your pitch and build off of. And I promise if you start from that perspective, you're going to be a lot more successful as you're pitching yourself around. Okay, if anybody else has an expert statement they want to run by us, feel free to post that. And if you're watching this on the replay later, you can still post it. I will come back and check. I love seeing these. I think it's so much fun. Like I said, you never know who in the group is going to see it and think, hey, I want to work with that person. Do you guys have any other questions about how to establish yourself as an expert? And I guess I sort of talked about how to decide what kind of expert you are and how to describe yourself as an expert. When it comes to actually establishing yourself as an expert, it is through those publicity and visibility opportunities, okay? So people will start to see you as an expert if they're coming on your site and you have that as seen in banner, and you've got TV clips from where you did a TV segment last week, and you've got a podcast interview you posted, and shared on Twitter. People will start to see you as an expert, and you won't even necessarily have to tell them I'm an expert and say the word expert. They will get it just from taking a look at your website and your social media. So when you get those opportunities to be visible and to do things like guest blogs and podcast interviews and those kind of things, absolutely make sure you're sharing them on social media, that you're adding them to your website, so that when people stumble across you and they're, sort of doing their background research on you and they're stalking you on your website and on your social media, they're getting all those things, because that's going to establish you as an expert in their mind. It's going to give you a lot of credibility, and you'd be amazed how that really ups the odds that they're going to click to book that discovery call with you or reach out to you to talk to you about your services more. Kelly asks, are there any tips in structuring a pitch? Why, yes, there are. So I will go through just kind of briefly here the structure I use for pitches. I have a new course that's coming out soon, which is actually how I ended up here in this group, was so I could learn more about developing my own course, but it's going to be an essentially be your own publicist course. It's going to teach people how to be their own publicist, because I don't do coaching anymore. I only work one-on-one with publicity clients who hire me to do their pitching for them. But I wanted to be able to still work with people who are in earlier stages of their business and can't afford me as a publicist and want to be their own publicist, because like I told you earlier, absolutely 100% you can be your own publicist. Okay. What I do for people is take that off their plate when they don't have time or they don't enjoy pitching, because I freaking love pitching. When I spend a full day pitching, that's how my day was yesterday. I am on such an adrenaline high. I love to pitch, but most of the people who hire me don't love to pitch. That's why they came to me. But when you're just starting out, if you can't afford a publicist, I am creating this course that will walk you through being your own publicist. And part of what I did in that course was walk you through paragraph by paragraph how I put together a pitch, the structure I use for pitching myself or someone else for, a guest blog versus a speaking engagement versus a TV segment. Roughly the same. It's a little different. They're not all exactly the same, but it's roughly the same basic formula. So if you are ready to write this down, or you can come back and watch the replay later. Okay, here is how I do my pitches. And I will try to remember to come back and put this in the comments, because I think I've typed up a really short version of it before. I almost always start my pitch with either a question or a shocking statistic or fact, okay? Because that grabs the person immediately, okay? Whether they're a podcast host, a talent booker for a TV show, somebody who's booking a speaker for an event, I will find something around the topic, I do the same thing for myself or for my clients. I find something around the topic that's kind of shocking, or some piece of their story. So for example, I have one client who has been to prison for DUI manslaughter, and she does speaking engagements around that experience and how she made her message. And so I might start a pitch from her with something really shocking, either a question or statement about the fact that she went to prison for DUI manslaughter after killing her best friend in a car accident. Something like that keeps people reading, okay? It doesn't have to be that dramatic or that heartbreaking, or however you want to word it. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have something tragic in your life, okay? My doctor client who has a skincare product, one of the pitches I did for her that I remember got a TV segment, we wanted to talk about this chemical that's quite often found in your skincare products. But it's not a listed chemical because it's usually under just the broad term fragrance, okay? So I remember we started that pitch with something, the chemical that was in the fragrance, they used to soften rubber, like rubber tires and things like that. So I won't remember the exact wording, but we opened it with something like, did you know you could be putting a chemical on your skin that's used to soften the rubber on tires? Like that keeps people reading. They're like, oh my God, what am I putting on my skin? It can also be a really interesting or shocking or surprising statistic. Okay. So maybe you're going on to talk about suicide. So maybe you give a statistic about how many suicides there are, or the average age for suicide. So it can be a statistic too. I really like when I start my pitch with a question. I almost always do it as a question. Sometimes I can't come up with one. And so I try that sort of shocking, interesting statement instead. And then so that would be like one line by itself. That's how I would start my pitch. The next paragraph would go into sort of developing the topic around the question or the statement. So I would start fleshing that out and explain further. So if it was the example with the skincare line, and I say, did you know you could be using this chemical that's used to soften rubber? In the next paragraph, I would explain the name of the chemical, what it was produced for, the fact that it's usually found under just the broad label of fragrance, how you can watch out for it. I delve into the topic. Then I would delve into the bio of my expert. Okay. So, the number one sort of like mistake, and this is not from my point of view. I have talked to a lot of editors and talent bookers and those kind of people about this and read a lot about it. And they all say the biggest mistake people make is starting with their bio, okay? I think it's better to start with your topic, and you want to grab them immediately because they get so many. You want them to keep reading. That's why I do the shocking like question or statement. Then I flesh out the topic. Then I explain why myself or my client, whoever I'm pitching for, is the person to come on and talk about that topic. This is where we get into that expert statement, okay? This is where I go into, okay? And Dr. Dee Pasquale is going to come on and she's going to teach your audience about this because she had thyroid cancer and she started looking at the labels on her products and she started investigating the ingredients and she could not believe what she was putting on her skin and on the skin of her patients. And she sought out to find a new product line that would provide medical grade benefits, but also be safe on the skin. And she couldn't find one, so she created her own product line. And I write a lot better than I speak on that kind of stuff. So my pitch probably was a little more eloquent than that, but you get the point. Like, so I frame up the topic for them and then I like drive home with my client's bio about why they are the person who should come on and talk about this. Because here's what happens sometimes. You pitch them an amazing topic, okay? And they're super excited about it. And they write you back and they tell you that your client isn't enough of an expert to come on, okay? I've had it happen before. It doesn't happen very often. I think I've only had it happen once in my current business, which is about 14 months old. I've had it happen to myself in the past, but as far as for clients, I think I've only had it happen once. I had this awesome topic I came up with for a client for a TV segment. I pitched it and then I credentialed her and I pitched her and we knew it was a long shot. She'd never done TV before. She was pretty new in her business. I mean, we knew all along that it was a long shot, and they came back and they said, we love the topic. She's not the person for it. And they actually asked me as the publicist to go out and find someone else to do the topic because they still wanted to have it on TV, okay? So you can do a great job of pitching the topic and pitch yourself right out of it if you don't do a good job establishing and credentialing yourself. And that's why that expert statement is so important, because you don't want that section to just be, I want to come on and talk about this topic because I'm an expert on social media marketing. Okay, there's a lot of people out there who probably identify themselves as an expert on social media marketing. Tell them why. And if you've got a connection in your experience that's specific to that topic, the topic that you pitched for the segment or the guest blog or the speech or whatever it is, absolutely tie that all up in a neat little bow. Don't expect them to connect the dots, okay? Connect the dots for them. And then you thank them for your time and you ask for something specific, okay? Don't just end it with, I thank you for your time and consideration. It's thank you for your time and consideration. Please let me know when we can set up a time to talk, or please let me know when we can schedule a time for me to come on your podcast or on your television show. Always make the ask at the end. Okay. So just to recap, and Kelly says she needs my doctor's skincare. We are launching a new website for her skincare, actually in the next week or so. It's super exciting. She's got some national TV opportunities. So we had to completely redo her website to be able to handle the hopeful masses that are going to come from this national TV appearance. So I will definitely shoot a link to you, Kelly, when it's available. But just to recap the pitch, and I know we're probably going a little long with the live now because I hadn't really planned to talk about the pitch and how to flesh it out. But it's something I wish that someone had taught me how to do. I just sort of learned it along the way. But I start with a shocking or surprising question, statement, or fact. Okay, and that's usually one sentence, one line. And then I flesh out the topic in the next paragraph. Don't get too lengthy with that. You don't have to give them everything that you're going to cover. Give them just enough to get them interested in the topic. They will email you and say, oh, can you outline for me what that would look like? You don't have to go into everything. And then credential yourself, okay? So use that expert statement to credential yourself as the person who should be going on or writing about that topic. And then you thank them for their time and you ask for what you want. Say, let me know when we can schedule a time for me to come on your podcast. Let me know when we can schedule a time for me to do a TV segment with you all, something like that. You want to make the ask at the end to encourage them to respond to you. And I think you'll find, you're not going to be successful 100% of the time. I wasn't either. I mean, when I talk about the fact that I got on with Forbes and I got my TV segment, I did not get yeses every time I pitched myself. I still don't get yeses every time I pitch myself or my clients. So you're not going to get a yes every time. But the great thing is that a lot of times these people will email you back and they'll tell you where you fell short. Okay. They'll tell you why the topic doesn't work for their audience, and make note of that. So you don't, next time you pitch them, you don't want to pitch something in the same area. If they tell you, for example, I pitched myself one time to write about something that would have been in the beauty section of Glamour. I really wanted to be in Glamour, and it was eventually, but at the time, it was my first pitch to Glamour, and they emailed me back and they said the editor over their beauty section doesn't like to use freelancers. She only uses in-house writers. So I have a spreadsheet. I keep that kind of stuff in. I wrote it down. I've never pitched them another beauty piece. It's been a few years, so I would check back in at this point if I wanted to write one. But you don't want to come back and have forgotten a few months later and pitch them beauty again, because then you're going to upset somebody and then they're not ever going to want to work with you. Okay. They got back to me. They told me they didn't take beauty. So then I pitched something for a different section of the magazine, and they actually didn't take that either. And something like 8 pitches later, I got a piece in Glamour, and I was so excited. I think it took me almost 2 years to get a piece in Glamour from the time I first started trying till the day it was like actually in the magazine. So some of these take a long time, especially for some of the bigger opportunities. But just keep at it. You know, if you're not out there pitching yourself, you're not going to be landing things. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, that goes back to that quote I told you guys earlier, you know, don't say no for other people. Give them the opportunity to say yes. And you do that by pitching them. So I know that gets like a little off topic from the whole establish yourself as an expert, but for me, the whole point in establishing yourself as an expert is to get those visibility opportunities, to be able to put yourself in front of more people, because again, if people don't know what you're doing, it doesn't matter how good you are at it. Okay. So you've got to get visible, even if it makes you a little bit uncomfortable. That's how you're going to grow your business, is by being more visible. Oh, you guys are all so nice to me. Everybody's saying such nice things. Kelly says you clearly love what you do. I really do. And it's interesting because I was doing something else. After I left ESPN, I was ghostwriting and doing more content marketing kind of stuff. And it took me a while to realize what I really loved was to pitch, and that I wanted to be out there pitching, and that I didn't want to coach and work with people one-on-one teaching them how to pitch, because what I love is the pitch. I want to be the one pitching. And actually I have a junior publicist on staff who helps me with a lot of stuff, and I did that so that I could give her some of the other work so that I could do the pitching, because I love that piece of it. So it's funny, sometimes it takes an outsider to tell you what lights you up and what you get really excited doing, and that's what happened to me. Was someone else pointed it out to me. Oh, thank you, Melissa. So nice. You guys are also nice to me. I just want to scan up and make sure I didn't miss anything else here. If anybody has any questions, I would love to answer them. If you post them later after we're not live anymore, I will come back and answer them. I'm happy to do that. If you didn't do your expert statement earlier, I really want to hear it. Okay, so all you have to do is fill in the blank. I am an expert at whatever you're an expert at, because, okay, so there's 2 blanks to fill in. You can go back and read through what other people have said. It's all about identifying what is that niche area that's your expertise, how are you serving people, and why are you great at it, okay? It's because of your background and your experience. So weave that into that expert statement. Oh, thank you, Kelly. See, you guys are so nice to me. I love this group. I'm going to come in here live all the time. No, I'm just kidding. But I really did enjoy it, and I will check back and look for more questions. And in the meantime, if you ever want to find me, you can find my website at guidemybrand.com, and you can pretty much find me on all the social media channels, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Guide My Brand. And then my group is called the Visibility Workshop, and I try to share my tips for becoming more visible and doing things in all those different mediums like public speaking and guest blogs and podcast interviews and TV and radio. And that's where people get the opportunity to hear first about my course, which is so close to being done. I'm having technical issues with my videos embedding, and they actually have their lead developer working on it because apparently it's some problem no one's ever had before. Of course, that would happen to me. So hopefully my course is going to be ready any day now. I am waiting with bated breath. I have been working on this course for the better part of this calendar year, and I am so excited to get it out there. So if you guys want to learn more about it, definitely check out my page or my group. Whitney says, any tips on pitching, especially TV segment, when I don't have any connections? Okay, you absolutely don't have to have connections whatsoever. The first time I pitched myself for TV was Comcast Sports Southeast, which was a regional network that happened to be based in Atlanta, where I lived at the time. And I watched one of their shows just because I'm a big sports fan. I really enjoyed their show, and I noticed that their legal expert hadn't been on in quite some time. And I am an attorney, but I was a practicing attorney at the time. And so I emailed them. I went on their website. I found an email address for a producer, and I emailed and just introduced myself. I said, that I was a practicing attorney in town. At that point, I had been published in like a legal journal for something I wrote. I had blogged a little bit on my own blog. And so I sent links to that to sort of credential myself a little bit. And that's something I didn't mention a minute ago when I was going through sort of my pitch and how I set that up. When I'm credentialing people, I do include links that are relevant. So if we're pitching for a guest blog, I include links for past blogs. If we're pitching for a podcast, I might include links from past podcast interviews. If it's TV and they have a reel, I'll include the link to the reel, that sort of thing. So that's all part of credentialing yourself. But I just emailed the TV station. I had never been on TV, like not even like a campus TV station. I mean, literally had never been on TV a day in my life. And I just emailed them and I told them that I was an expert. I was like 25, 26 at the time and running around calling myself an expert, which now looking back seems like really ballsy and really like overly confident, like borderlining on obnoxious, but it worked. So I emailed them and told them I was an expert on legal issues in sports. And it was because, look, I had been published in this journal and I was a practicing attorney and blah, blah, blah. And the producer emailed me back and she asked me if I wanted to come in and meet with her. And I went in and met with her and we really hit it off. She was young. I had gone to University of Florida for law school. She had gone to University of Florida for journalism school. So we sort of hit it off on our whole like alma mater thing. And she offered me a like trial run on their live show to come on and do an entire segment. I did that and expressed afterwards how much I enjoyed it and that I'd love to do it again. And they ended up giving me a weekly segment, which I had for 2 years until I left and went to ESPN. So my only real tip for pitching yourself is just do it. And if you can't find an email address on the website like I did, identify the show that you want to go on. Make sure that your topic fits the demographic for that show. So like some of my clients wouldn't be great for morning television. I'm not great for morning television. They don't generally cover sports on morning television, and that's my area of expertise outside of publicity. So I don't ever pitch myself for morning TV, with the exception of when I was on my book tour. I managed to do some morning TV because I had a book. That's my book back there. Saturday Millionaires. I ended up with 2 book deals along the way from traditional publishers, which is a story for another time. But morning TV is not great for me. So make sure you're pitching a show where your topic fits in. You can usually find on the station's website, they'll have a page for each show, and usually it'll have clips from past shows, including clips with guest experts they've had on. So kind of look through those and see if your topic fits in with the types of topics they usually have. Like I have one client that does cooking segments, so I always go on and make sure they do cooking segments because some morning shows don't. But it's usually pretty easy to figure out on their website. And then if you can't find contact information on the website for that particular show, don't just send an email to like info@wjxt.com. If you can't find a person's email to send it to that's listed either as a talent booker or as a producer, call the station. Just call the main number. When the receptionist answers, just say, I'm trying to find out who books guests for Good Morning Charlotte. And they'll usually tell you, and they'll give you the person's email address. They usually don't ask questions, so don't feel like you have to have like a whole pitch put together. I've never had one, I don't think, put me through to the actual person, so I've never had to like pitch on the fly. Normally I just tell the receptionist that I want to know who the producer is for that show and can I have their email address. And so I usually do like a soft reach out via email first. And then if they don't email me back within like a week, then I'll call and follow up. Unless it's a client that has something tied to a news story and we need to be on faster, then I do it by phone. But I prefer email pitching, and most producers and talent bookers prefer to be pitched by email because they're busy. They don't have time for a phone call they didn't know was coming in and to like be listening to your whole long pitch. So I usually only follow up by phone. Email is usually a much, much better way to get them. So I hope that answers your question. Oh, you're welcome, Whitney. And Sheila said, would love to link to your group. Can you give a link? Yes, when I get done here, I will come in the comments and put a link to my group. It's, just to say it out loud, it's facebook.com/groups/guide my personal brand. The group's actually called the Visibility Workshop, but I got my URL a long time ago when I was calling my business something else. So there you go. But I will come back and put the link in the comments. Any other questions before I go? I am going to go get a glass of wine and enjoy the rest of my evening. Maybe spend a little time with the husband. I don't know. We'll see how his work's going. He's been downstairs working on his own business while I've been up here talking to you ladies. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. I will check back for questions later, especially those of you who are watching on the replay. I am happy to answer as many questions as you have. I'm completely transparent. I will share almost anything. I'll give you my tips and tricks. Like, I'm not trying to hide the ball from you or anything like that. So I appreciate so much those of you who were here live. Thank you for the awesome questions. I know, I can tell from some of your expert statements that you are going to go out there and you are going to start landing some awesome stuff. I can just tell. So be sure to tell me about it. I want to hear about it when you land that kind of stuff, okay? Have a fantastic evening wherever you are, and thank you again for showing up. I appreciate it. Good night.